This is a tricky bit for me to deal with. I tried, but I couldn't. I had to say it.
Hello guys and welcome to the Purple Goat podcast. Today we have a juicy episode and we have Gina and Charlie. Hello guys.
Yeah.
Do you want to introduce yourselves first?
Oh, I'm going first. Okay. So I'm Charlie. Main thing I do is the Not Quite Pod and run a personal brand called Not Quite Politically Correct.
Cool.
I'm Gina. I'm a campaign manager at Purple Goat Agency, and I am essentially the personal assistant of the Not Quite podcast and the Not Quite Politically Correct brand, and Charlie himself.
Okay, so just to give a bit more of context, you're a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We actually quite like each other.
Yeah. And we're not siblings like everyone thinks we are.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. But I really want to know how you guys met before we start.
Yeah, you can go for it. Yeah, go for it.
So I met one of Charlie's friends. I'm from Birmingham. Charlie's from Kent, and so like for the context of how we met across the UK is I met a friend of his in Birmingham at an interview, and we ended up chatting for a while, and he was like, oh, I think you'd really get along with my mate Charlie. Linked us up on Instagram. We were just chatting for a while, and then the chatting got more intense, and then it turned into trying to meet up in Milton Keynes halfway, and so yeah, sure, okay. First date, second date, the next week, Milton Keynes, and the rest they say is history.
I mean, the crazy thing is, I remember two things. One was my mate went to me, like, he looked at me and he was like, "Nah, you didn't, did you?" And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "You're dating her already, aren't you?" I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And it was a whole conversation. And then as well, we moved in really quickly. So we'd only been together 9 months.
Yeah, it was about 8 months,
moved
and
down
I
here.
moved in with your parents. So we were a bit Speedy Gonzales on the whole relationship, but here we are, almost 6 years later, and I've been living with your parents for 5 years now. So
Yeah, well, with the
something's
cost
right.
of living crisis, I don't think that will be changing anytime soon.
Moving on, let's talk about sex.
Baby.
Okay, so I want to talk about sex, but I want to talk about sex education.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that sex education in schools is just not the best. It's usually focused on these straight couples, non-disabled couples.
Mm-hmm.
So how was your experience in terms of what you learned in school or what you learned in any place in terms of sex education? Like both experiences. How was that growing up?
I feel like I had quite a lot of sex education. Like I did it at least like 3 or 4 times throughout school. So like started off with the whole like puberty talk, which FYI, both women and men and everyone in between should hear both sides of the situation for whatever genitals you have. It shouldn't be split up like it. I don't know if it still is now, but it was when I was younger. And then it was like the safe sex talk about 3 or 4 times, but it always felt awkward. It always felt like the teachers didn't want to be doing the talk. And like then that makes us feel awkward as teenagers, but also like, yeah, it just means the information isn't relayed very well. So in terms of the actual like education side of it, you just end up learning more from like talking to friends and I guess like TV programs, obviously the internet, but the internet isn't a very safe place to find out about sex. Sometimes, depends where you're looking, there's plenty of safe sex conversations out there now and like sex educators online. So
I think mine didn't really, like, it wasn't very comprehensive. It was literally, here's how the biology works, here's how you put a condom on, and that's it.
yeah.
That was pretty much the strength of my one.
We had the purple plastic penis. Did you have a purple plastic penis that you had to put a condom on?
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
purple. Very on brand.
Yeah, very on brand.
Yeah.
All of them were purple for some reason.
Oh,
They were all purple plastic penises.
interesting.
The new purple goat coming to you.
The X-rated purple goat.
Purple
Do
goat
merch.
after hours. New merch.
New merch
see
line
that.
coming soon. So based on that, when you met and when you started dating, how was your experience? And I'm not asking you to tell me about your first time.
What happened was we went. No, I'm joking. I think we both pretty much were quite open about it. Obviously, after the initial kind of conversation of like, oh, have you ever had sex? It was like, okay, well, we're both just going to be open and honest about this, and it is awkward, but we were both like,
we
we're
just
going to
laughed
approach
about
this
it.
with, let's take our own time and like, however it happens, whatever happens, because we're like, we have no idea what we're doing here. So
I think as well, like for me, there was obviously naturally more of the anxiety because obviously I've got my disability to contend with, and there was a load of stuff that I didn't realise till obviously we got to it, and it was kind of like, this is a sticky point. Do you mind the pun? This is a tricky bit for me to deal with. I tried, but I couldn't. I had to say it. But yeah, it was just a lot of things that I didn't expect to came up, and then obviously naturally I'm just gonna let Carmen recompose herself.
Charlie, you're making so many puns.
I'm not. I wasn't. Like after that, I was pretty good.
You weren't expecting things to come up.
I mean, I didn't even see that one. So
I wasn't until I looked over at Dom.
right, do you want me to
we
read?
just approached each.
Yeah, I think what I
obstacle.
was trying to get to before I ended up going on innuendo rampage was that basically, like, obviously having a condition, there's so many things that you forget to consider because you haven't been in that environment and that you haven't had to deal with those challenges. So for me, it was a lot of like internal, oh, okay, this is something that I'm going to need help with, or there's going to be a challenge. Oh, okay, how do I approach that conversation with Gina without it being a bit like, this is really weird, I can't do this, I'm going to have to do this instead. Yeah, that was, for me, was an internal monologue, particularly with things like masculinity. Obviously, there's a big conversation surrounding that, but as like most, well, not most, but I had that whole alpha complex of wanting to be the male in the relationship and have that, but then there's often that bit of actually having to be quite vulnerable and be like, actually, this is really hard for me, I can't do this, this isn't going to be how I envisaged it or you envisaged it, so let's just go with it.
I think particularly when it comes to sex as well, there's a bit of like a masculinity thing around it. It seems like women are like just generally stereotyping, like men do talk about sex but in a bit more of a primal way, whereas women might talk about sex in a bit more of a detailed or like intimate way with their friends. So generally that stigma's already there, but also then you've got, as like a male, you probably have a bit of expectation and pressure, and like as Charlie says, like coming across things that realise weren't going to work the way you originally thought, or have to approach in a different way. But then for us, like, communication was key, and we just like didn't rush anything, but didn't put pressure on anything either. It was like, we're just going to enjoy what we want to enjoy and how we enjoy it, and if we have to learn how to do it differently or however what works for us. And that's the same in any relationship anyway. Like something that worked in your last relationship might not work, or something that works in your mind not work, oh for goodness sake, might not work in person with the person you're in a relationship with, and that's why communication is so important.
Yeah, and I think as well, naturally, as the disabled person, and also as I say, because of the masculinity complex, I guess, it's that whole thing of, I had that thing of, if I tell her this thing that I can't do, is she then going to be like, okay, this is off the table now, we're not going to do this, let's just go back to watching a film. And be like, oh, okay, I just completely ruined the mood, and then it makes that awkward. So I was constantly worried that it was going to suddenly turn awkward and be like, oh, okay,
Yeah, I
This
think
is where
that's
we are
why,
now.
and I think that's why communication is so important, because then when you do come to like a bit of an awkward point, or a point where you just have to stop and like just have a laugh, like we did
a lot.
we did just laugh, and if you don't have that in your relationship, or someone makes you feel uncomfortable or guilty, then it's not right. You need open communication and understanding.
I think it's so much harder. I mean, obviously, I can only speak from personal experience, but it's so much harder as a disabled individual at the beginning of the relationship. Obviously, there's always that whole trying to figure each other out, trying to figure out what's going on. But then, obviously, there's a lot of additional stuff going on. And obviously, if your partner's or the person you're with's first person with a disability they've come into contact with, there's a lot there to unpack. And it's just an additional bit of pressure that often the disabled community can feel. But yeah, that went really deep. But it's just interesting to give the thought process behind it of going, there's a little extra layer applied to anyone with a disability, because there's so much more to explain, and to, like, you almost need to provide a manual to be like, okay, I can do this, can't do this, don't do this, do this.
I have said, how cool would a Kama Sutra for disabled people be?
What, sorry?
A Kama Sutra? Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Kama
the
Kama
book of
Sutra.
is the book
It's like the book of
of
positions, basically.
Yeah.
But for disabled people. However,
But then there's
every disabled person is
there would
different,
need to
so-
be like volume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The only visual way, I suppose, to explain it, and not that I'm condoning it, but like I always had this joke with my friends saying I could never really do a one night stand, because like there would be far too much to explain in 24 hours for me to actually complete that task. So
That's why
like
you need your manual.
yeah,
Here you go, let's
just
go.
full instruction manual. So I think that's the thing, is like for
That's your chat up line.
Yeah.
Walk over to a bar.
just slap the
slide
manual on the
manual
table.
down the table.
It's like the yellow pages. Yeah,
An IKEA book.
basically. But no, I think, and that's the thing, it's like almost have to get to know each other a little bit deeper before you even explore that, because there's an extra layer there. I mean, I'd say, I'm only speaking from my experience, people are probably going to be like, no, I did this, this, and this. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I was completely wrong.
In terms of you as a couple, and like you were saying that you've been together for 6 years, what are some of the things that people have said to you, and how have you responded to those things?
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
You can go first. Go on.
I think one of my favourites has to be, if me and Gina have kids, will they come out in wheelchairs? Has to be one of my favourites.
I always forget.
I mean, as well, it doesn't help that I'm really sarcastic, so I can resist in saying, yeah, they come out in different colour wheelchairs. Because I was just like, where is this person come from to come out with this idea?
Part bionic.
Yeah.
So yeah, if anybody needs a wheelchair, just pop one out.
Gina's the female version of Iron Man.
Yeah, basically. I think, obviously, we constantly get asked if we're brother and sister, but I think the weirdest ones that we have is when it's a waiter or somebody who isn't even having a conversation with us, or isn't even like involved with us. So
Yeah.
we've had waiters come over to our table and ask us when they're not even serving our table, or like someone passing who I've not bumped into the toilet. We've not bumped into as we're walking past and started up a little conversation. Just completely like out of the blue come past us and be like, "Are you brother and sister?" You know, you think, no.
Yeah, it is a bit weird.
Like, and that's when I find it a bit weird. Like every other time, it's like, yeah, two gingers together. Wow.
But then I don't get the shock, because I'm like, if you saw two blonde people together, you wouldn't go, oh, they've got to be related.
And then people
Yeah.
go like, oh, you look like each other. And I'm like, no, it's the ginger hair. Like we all know it's the ginger hair.
That's when Carmen goes, no, you literally look like twins.
Yeah. But, and then I think as more of like I guess it's a little bit of a negative one, is it's a kind of backwards compliment when people almost congratulate me or thank me for being with Charlie. And I have had literally people say thank you, or oh, you're so good, or oh, basically
Well done you.
Yeah,
for dating-
well done you
Well done
for
you for dating the poor
putting
disabled
up
boy.
with him, basically, is what they're saying, is putting up with him, or taking him on almost. And it's like, you wouldn't say that to anybody else for taking anybody else like as their partner. And everybody has their personal baggage, their lifestyle, their personality, their problems, their like good things. And when you're dating someone, like, you take all of that on. And I don't see Charlie's disability as an extra to that. I see it as just part of that. So like, his disability is just part of his life. So then when we share our life, it just becomes part of my life, and it just is part of my life. It's not an addition, it's not a challenge, it's not a problem. It's just part of my life. And yeah, it almost degrades our relationship. And it's that whole thing of it makes it seem like it's a uneven relationship, and that I bring more to the relationship than Charlie does, and it dismisses what Charlie does bring to the relationship, but also Charlie as a partner. And that's why I don't like it, because like, I mean, if I wouldn't be with him if he wasn't a great partner, and he's a great partner in like so many ways. But people just don't see that, because they think, oh well, you must be doing more for him than he does for you. And that does annoy me. And quite often I brush it. I might say something back, or I go like, that's really rude, but often it's just like someone who's drunk, and I know they just don't mean it to be rude, so I just brush it off, and I'm just like, yeah, but he's great too. And that's just
Yeah, and I think as well, like, of one of the common ones you get is like, as a male straight man, it's that, oh, you done well, but there's an extra connotation to like that, of like, people will say that and go, oh, you done well in terms of you've done well to get someone that looks that good. But with me, there's an extra layer of there's just that little bit of, there's a little bit of seriousness behind it, whereas a lot of the time to your average Joe, it's said in jest and good fun, and oftentimes it's meant in that way, but then there's that inner connotation of, no, you actually, there's part of you that means that. And that's another
you did
challenge.
well to like lock in a girl that's willing to put up with you, is basically what it sounds like.
Or the other one that often I find really hard to wrap my head around is the automatic assumption that I'll say to someone, oh yeah, my partner's called Gina, this and this, and the automatic question is, oh, has she got a disability as well? And it's like, do you think we have telepathy where we all get together, or like there's a specific bar that we all go to and just go, yeah, let's do some speed dating? No.
So what do you think about, because I'm guessing that a lot of non-disabled people think that disabled people only want to date other disabled people. So what do you think about that?
I think it's really hard, because I think as much as there is an element of someone else with a disability has a lot more understanding and things like that, it's like you have to just go with what you feel most comfortable with. Like I don't know. It's just, it's a weird one to think about, because I know there are a couple out there that both have disabilities, but I think to say that, oh, you can only date someone with a disability, I think it's just harder, because naturally people who haven't been exposed to a disability wouldn't consider dating someone with a disability. It's like that common question, I mean, you might come on to it later, of do you put your disability in your dating bio? And that question I never know how to answer, because I'm like, on the one hand, no, you shouldn't hide yourself, because that is you. But then on the other hand, I'm like, if it gets your foot in the door, and then you can expose them to a disability and help them learn and help them on their journey, then who knows where that relationship would go. I mean, if you take us, for example, you weren't really exposed to a disability before you met me, but you kind of just, mind the pun, ran with it, and just went with it. And whereas if that's the way you have the most success, and where you meet the most interesting people and someone that you do connect with, then that's the right option. But it's a really hard one, because it's opening the door for disabled people to say, look, I'm not asking you to like marry me now, I'm just asking you not to close the door straight away. And I think that's the biggest challenge dating with a disability, is getting that door open in the first place, because oftentimes as soon as the word disabled gets muttered, everyone goes, oh, I'm not going to go anywhere near that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, like, it's almost the non-disabled community almost excusing the fact that they wouldn't consider dating a disabled person. It's like, oh, disabled people only want to date disabled people because they have too many problems, and they know how to deal with it or they understand each other. And it's like, it's still everyone with a disability. We can say a million times, like, no disability is the same. Like, yes, it might be the same and you might experience the same symptoms, but you might experience them differently to the person next to you. And like, just because someone else has a disability doesn't mean they're going to have the same level of understanding.
And I think it's just about people being more open to it and saying, look, if I go out with this guy or girl and I like them, let's see where it goes. And then they can explain to me how their disability affects them or their condition affects them. And then I can make an informed decision then. Because by slamming the door straight away, you don't even know the person. They could be the best person you've ever met, but you've shut the door straight away.
Yeah. I think that comes down to also what we were talking about at the beginning, just a lack of education about certain topics. In terms of dating someone, from a non-disabled perspective, I think there's that fear of, I don't know how things will go. This is like,
How to approach the conversation.
yes. So like maybe if I've dated people before that were non-disabled, I kind of guess what might happen. And it's kind of a safer conversation, a safer situation. And in the other case, I'm like, I don't know how that's going.
I suppose on that point, it really depends on the individual. I mean, I'm very open, very honest, and very happy. The way I describe it is happy-go-lucky about my condition in terms of I'll tell you what you want to know. I mean, I'm on a podcast talking about my sex life. So, but I think that's as well, the other thing as well is finding the person that is open to having that conversation. Because I think if you've got someone that's still battling to
processing it,
to process their disability, accepting their disability, and they're still on that journey, if they're at the beginning of that journey, they're not going to be in a position where they can comfortably educate someone. So then that adds an extra layer. So I think there's no right or wrong answer. I just wish that people were more open to the conversation. And if we all know, if you have a conversation with someone and it drops dead, you're not going to continue it. That's the end of that. So then you can make that judgment because you've had that conversation. Whereas, again, if you just shut the door straight away, you're never going to know. But I completely get your point of it's that fear of the unknown of, oh my God, what am I walking into?
It's the fear of the unknown and fear of, like, I guess, insulting by assuming or questioning, which, is what we're all about.
I think that's
I
think that's the other challenge. So, because if you've got someone like me, like, you'd have to do something really serious to offend me to the point of me not having the conversation and explaining to you, okay, that's just outright wrong, but I'd have the conversation with you. Whereas if you've got someone that isn't that way inclined and will shut down after a point like that, then it makes it a very different conversation.
It's because as well, that is partly because not everyone wants to be and has to be like an educator. Like, I'm just a person. I don't have to educate you. Yeah, I'm just living my life. So, and it's like, and nobody, that's completely fair enough. But yeah, I mean, I could talk about this for ages.
So I want to talk about some of the most frequently asked things that people ask you, and they can be juicy.
The common one for me as a male is always, does it work? And which is a common one, and obviously that
can confirm.
That does depend on the condition, but for me, yes, it does. And the other one's like, can you have kids? Is a common one.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that my girlfriend asked me was, is he any good? And I was like,
just stroke my ego. That's fine. But yeah,
But yeah, and I think obviously that just comes with the assumption of the assumption and the unknown of, like, how does sex work with disabled people?
I think that,
like, it works.
I think that everyone asks that. I feel like
that's not
even like my friends will ask me that, or I will ask my friends.
Yeah.
But I guess that there's another layer.
Yeah, there was. I think
how do
like,
the logistics work?
Yeah, it was almost like followed up. It was like, is he any good and does it affect? And I'm like, well, I only give those details out to the besties. I think one thing that I mentioned to you before was the fact that like some people will A, assume I'm a carer, but B, call me a carer because I assist Charlie and I might provide assistance for certain things. And personally, I don't like using the word carer, even if it is in the kind of logistical term. So when it comes, even like, obviously I don't mind it when it comes down to things like, oh, can we give you a carer ticket or a carer space, or will a carer be coming with you? Like, I'm not that pedantic, but I don't like being referred to as, oh, are you Charlie's carer? I am his girlfriend before I'm anything else. And B, I prefer the term personal assistant. And it's purely because that's the way I see it. I like assist you. I assist with like, I assist you. I am. And also a personal assistant just makes me feel a bit sassier. Whereas I think it's like there's connotations around carers. And that's not dissing what carers do. Like carers are amazing. And I think just generally as a coming from like a non-disabled background, like there is connotation around the word carer, and immediately I would think of someone older.
Yeah, and I think like on your point, I think that's another thing to mention is a lot of people. The assumption of us being brother and sister doesn't only just come from us both being ginger. It comes from the fact of people automatically going, "Oh, he's disabled. He can't have a girlfriend."
Or like seeing me assist Charlie, like I don't know, I'll be helping him get into his chair or putting his jacket on or getting some out of his bag, and immediately like they're like, "Oh, she's caring for him." And I'm like, I'm not. I'm just helping him. Like you would help your partner, like. Get off out of a chair or whatever, you know.
We've completely gone on a tangent to what Carmen asked. There was another. Oh, the other one that I often get is the misconception that I just do nothing. I just lay there.
Yeah, yeah.
That's another one. Yeah, so I'm just lazy.
Well, that's I mean, I guess all of this circles back to that sex education like conversation, and the fact that we just figured things out, but
trial and error is the way forward.
Trial and error.
And that's like for everyone.
And trial and success. I can't think of anything else, do you think?
No, I'm trying to think. Everyone seems to think that I have a dungeon. Like everyone's like, oh, do you like use specialist equipment? And like, while there are people that use equipment, I'm like, also why is that where everyone's head goes? Like that I've got a separate room that me and Gina go into. Like, right, it's 6 o'clock. We better get going.
Schedule.
First to comment, if you had a dungeon in your parents' house, that's
great. I was gonna say that. Sex swing in the corner.
Yeah, don't mind that, Mum. Don't worry about that.
It's just a hammock.
It's just a hoist. It's just a hoist. It's fine. It's to support me.
Second question. What are you excited about in your future together?
Oh, that's cute.
Oh,
That's a really good question.
our future together. That's what I'm excited for.
Yeah.
I think we've already done so much together, like with NQPC starters, and also like the conversation of personal brand and creating was how we started like talking and started to get along. So that's always been a bit of a passion project for us, and we've already done so much with that I think it's really exciting to see what we end up doing in the future, because you're very entrepreneurial and you like being creative, and I just like coming along in the background and working away. But yeah, no, I think that side of it career-wise is exciting. Yeah. And then also just I'm just excited for general like
I think both of us
family life.
Yeah, and both of us love to travel, so that's a big thing on our list. Like we've got there's certain trips that we're like, oh, we've got to do this at some point. So travel's a big one for us.
I'm really looking forward to just having our own home, our own space, and I think that for any couple is a big like goal and achievement. And obviously we have the privilege of being able to live together and live with his parents for so long, and occasionally like we'll have the house to ourselves, whatever, and it's just like, oh, this is so nice. I can imagine us in our little flat or house or bungalow or whatever we can afford.
Shed.
Probably a shed. But yeah, just I'm excited for that. I'm really excited to figure out how routines will
Logistics, yeah.
change and like what our habits will be when
I mean, we're both
Move out.
we started talking about moving out a little while ago, and we realised that both of us are very much excited by very like mundane things.
Yeah.
So like one of mine is I'm really excited to get an air fryer because at the moment I can't get an air fryer.
I have one. And
Ah.
it's amazing. Can confirm.
I really want one, and there's no space in my house to get one. So I think that's literally probably it. Is the business side of things we both want to progress with, and see where it goes.
Yeah.
And then
I think
just
the most
holidays and houses.
holidays and
Lots of
houses.
exciting things.
Yeah. We were like, this episode's going to be so short and quick, and here we are waffling on about our sex life.
Well, is there anything else that you want to add?
Just our usual. Go follow us on NQPC.
Hello, not quite politically correct.
And if you want to listen to my wonderful voice even more, go follow the Not Quite Pod.
Well, thank you for sharing all your juicy sex life with me. It's been lovely.
Anytime, Carmen. Thank you for interviewing us, Carmen.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. If you like this, please like, subscribe, follow us, comment of those things. If you want any more juicy episodes, let us know. Yeah, thank you. Bye.